in this panel, we'll be talking about the role of financial literacy in igniting untapped potential. And just to get started, before he gets on, um, just a quick introduction for him. So Gary is a co-founder of Plataforma Impact. It's a digital marketplace that matches employers with a pipeline of untapped talent. They're closing the skills gaps by leveraging technology to identify, train, and place high potential low-income youth within the formal job market. Gary recently served as the global operation manager for News Story Charity, and he holds a bachelor's from the University of Washington and a master's in Latin Studies from UC Berkeley. So Gary, take it off from here.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you very much for the introduction. Again, my name is Gary Carrier, and I am the founder of Plataforma. It's a social enterprise pioneering the way that the world sources untapped talent. Like many of you, I was drawn to FinMango not only because of its mission, but really because of its potential. And I'm certain we have all been drawn together through this sort of common conduit because of our shared belief in the potential to create something better than what we were all born into. And we are living, I believe, in perhaps the most important crossroads in human history, a time when the imperfect systems of the past collide with technological revolution and a spiritual awakening. And by being born during this time period and having the privilege of being part of a network of visionaries and believers means that we, all of us, carry a huge responsibility. We are creating the future, and that future really depends on our ability to grasp the urgency of the present. So the topic of my discussion today is the potential of financial literacy. But we can't even begin to discuss the latter until we unpack the former. Potential, it's the substance, right? It's the life force. And financial literacy, well, that's the tool. A tool that can be used to turn dreams into reality. But the tool is powerless without the energy behind it. Awakening and empowering the potential to be able to harness that tool is really how we create change in the world. And oftentimes all we need is a small spark to ignite that fire that burns deep within us and carries us forward to things that we never could have imagined. I, for example, never could have imagined myself in rural Kyrgyzstan speaking with loan representatives from a local microfinance institution about the innovative systems that they had developed to reach their country's most vulnerable. This organization had utilized sort of the untapped potential of senior citizens who were no longer seen as producers of value in their communities. And this organization hired them for really their social capital, their knowledge, to help them determine which potential borrowers in the community were trustworthy and honorable. They recognized untapped potential. I never could have imagined myself sitting in on cooperative meetings of women entrepreneurs in urban Ecuador while they exchanged best practices of their businesses and all of the stories of how they rose up and overcame challenges of being a woman entrepreneur, all the while inspiring their communities and invigorating the potential that exists within those bearing witness to what was, seemingly impossible. Again, untapped potential. I never could have imagined myself taking part in unveiling the world's first 3D printed community in Mexico, built especially for families living on less than $2 a day. And witnessing families settling into these new homes, only to come back a few months later and find them starting businesses in what was now a permanent and reliable structure. I remember talking to one young man who was selling churros out of his new house and using the profits from his business to save for tuition for college. Pretty impressive. And again, untapped potential. These experiences, they showed me that potential is universal, but opportunity is not. And that helping others realize their own potential requires you to develop your own. And in case you're wondering about why I ended up in these places, I'll tell you a little bit about how. My journey started just outside of Seattle, Washington, in a small but diverse community. Part of my youth was spent on an American Indian reservation, while the other part was spent attending quinceañeras and other traditional Mexican holidays, since many of my community members were migrant workers. But this context laid the groundwork for a life where difference wasn't feared, but it was embraced and it was sought after. Both the Native Americans and the Latinos, they seem to have or possess a deep wisdom of life and what it means to be alive, and I couldn't get enough of that. That's probably why at 22, recently graduated from the University of Washington, and in the wake of my first global economic catastrophe, I found myself walking the streets of Guadalajara, Mexico, a city that I sort of decided to move to on a whim, and I was passing my resume out to anybody who'd take it. I always found ways to make money, but the thing that really lit my soul on fire was the gift of giving, perhaps the practicality of that great wisdom that was shared with me during my youth. I ventured through much of Latin America, building homes, painting murals, teaching English, and coordinating volunteers in areas that even locals warned about. It was more or less a year or so into living and working in Brazil's largest favela community, which is an urban slum of about 200,000 people, that I realized that if I was to continue dedicating my life to igniting the potential that others possess within themselves, which is really what I came to understand as sort of my reason for being, that I needed to think more strategically about how to do that at scale, and quite honestly, how to make a living doing it. And this epiphany, it led me to start thinking about how I could leverage my own privilege to be able to facilitate large amounts of investment capital to people and to organizations that were doing really exceptional and really impactful work on the ground. So after completing my graduate studies at UC Berkeley, I joined a nonprofit impact investing firm in San Francisco, where I oversaw a portfolio of investments designed to empower low-income women entrepreneurs around the world. And several years later, I found myself at the intersect of technology and impact, where I managed operations for a company pioneering solutions to end global homelessness. And it was really kind of at that time that I had my second aha moment. Knowledge is power. And one of the most efficient ways to increase access to it is through technology. And just as financial literacy is a tool, so is technology. And just as financial literacy has the ability to empower, so does technology. Nearly 5 billion people now have access to a smartphone, and over half of the population can log on to the internet. Still, nearly half of the world lives on less than $5 a day, and over 1 billion families live in urban slums. Information technology has become ubiquitous, and although its growth is exponential, our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of the potential that lies buried within us remains seemingly linear at best. I mean, can you imagine if people realize their potential at the same rate that technology has developed? It's wishful thinking, but perhaps it's possible. But one thing I do know is that inspiration is a more creative task, and the right kind requires a targeted diligence that only another human being can provide. So we've got the tools to build the kind of house that we want to live in, but we don't yet have the input of those who will call it home. We cannot continue to disguise the power of our privilege with hope and good intention. We must instead empower those whose voices have yet to be heard to become equal and active participants in the creation of this house, in the creation of a new society. And by igniting untapped potential, we foster bottom-up human solutions, not top-down theoretical experiments. This was the thinking behind Plataforma. The emergence of IT has created a global talent shortage. In Latin America specifically, nearly 75% of companies cite difficulties sourcing talent. Meanwhile, nearly 1 in 4 families live in an urban slum. And it's been said that necessity is the mother of innovation. Well, in impoverished communities across the globe, there's no shortage of creative solutions to some of life's most critical barriers. As we move away from industrialization and into this new innovation economy, who better to confront the challenges of the future than those who, by virtue of living circumstances, are curated and natural creative problem solvers? It is our belief at Plataforma that the type of that sort of outside the box thinking that is required by the 21st century economy resides very much within the marginalized peripheries of the old system. And it is our duty to ignite that potential. We are truly at an inflection point. And the recent pandemic only further validates that we are at an important crossroads in our history as a species and as fellow sojourners on this planet. 2020, it's a challenging time, but it's a very exciting time to be alive. It feels as if we are undergoing sort of this global phoenix process, right, of death and rebirth. We are shedding old paradigms, we are reimagining unsustainable behaviors, and we are leaving behind destructive ways of thinking. And in the wake of death, there will be a great rebirth. And it is my hope that in the fertile soil of destruction, we are born a better, more loving, more empathic global community that sees ourselves not as owners, but as guests on this beautiful oasis floating in the vastness of space. And that recognizes our responsibility to leave this place in a better condition than we found it. It is my hope that we emerge really from sort of this period of darkness, reminded of that seemingly forgotten wisdom that the rule of life is to live for others, that rivers don't drink their own water, flowers don't suck their own nectar, trees don't provide their own shade. They do these things for others, which is the rule of life. The rule of life is to use the gifts that we were given in order to help others thrive. For me, the greatest gift that I've received and the greatest gift that I can share is that of knowledge. We are imperfect works in progress. And it's important to take it easy on yourself and take it easy on others. We're all just trying to figure this thing out. It's also important to remember those profound lessons in life that seem to sit with us and that hopefully act as guides should we ever lose our way. FinMango and the movement we are all a part of is about sharing knowledge. It's inspiring untapped potential so that as many voices as possible are heard in the creation of the world of tomorrow. In that way, our existence is that of the perennial student and teacher. And the teacher inside me feels compelled to share 5 of the more profound lessons that I have gathered along the way in my short time here. Here they are. Number 1, life is measured by the love that you cultivate. Nothing more, nothing less. Be mindful of what you put into the universe, it comes back. Number 2, the change you seek for the world or for yourself is slow and laborious. Growth comes during confrontation with weakness. You can think of it as character under construction. Number 3, do not live solely for external achievement. Not only will the most important parts of you go unexplored, you will miss out on the deepest meanings of life and the highest moral joys. Number 4, community is at the core of the human condition. It is fundamental to true happiness. Expand your network. Do it wisely, but expand your network. And remember that everybody that you meet knows something that you don't. Number 5, travel is good for the soul. The world is a book, and without travel, you may only read one page. Make the effort, because vulnerability begets empathy, and empathy begets peace. A new generation of leadership is being born. Shoot, many of them are already here. They are the Janine Ledfords, they're the Mark Strabos, they're the Ananya Pareks, they're the Benjamin Fernandezes, they're the Scott Glasgows, they are the Malalas, the Greta Thunbergs, all of these people. And quite frankly, most of you who have elected to take part in this event, to put your time and energy into this right here. You are the people pioneering what must become the real new normal. Purpose-driven businesses, social and environmental justice movements, and leaders that challenge us to do better and to be better. That must be the new normal. I firmly believe that this generation of new leadership will help us ascend into a higher meaning of existence. One that is aligned with universal law, one that takes care of and not advantage of our home, one that elevates leadership rooted in moral character, and one where your impact is the true measure of your success. The work is underway, but there's much to be done. And igniting the potential of others is surely one of the best ways to strengthen that collective push towards the kind of society that empowers us to see the unique gifts that we all possess. A society that never again takes life in any of its forms for granted. And I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Wow, that's just an amazing story. Just from hearing like the different perspective um, from you and like in the financial literacy world. So I mean, we have if anyone else wants to ask questions in the chat, we could give it time. But like one of the most like impactful thing that I took from yours was I never thought like the power of giving. I feel like that stood out so much to me. Um, like that power of giving can be like used pretty much anywhere, anytime. It really impacts all humans. Um, but like just another question I would have is like, is there anything or like just one amazing advice that you can well that you can share with the audience? Just like one advice that really stood out to you when you were young to right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all of us who are kind of the millennial generation or right around it, you know, we were young coming into adulthood and looking in the face of a global economic catastrophe. And that left a lot of us jaded, right? Because we saw an entire generation who had come before us kind of follow all of the right steps in order to be successful and to be able to retire and enjoy life and do all these things. And for many of them, the rug was sort of ripped out from under them kind of as they were getting ready to settle down and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I think that had a really impactful, it was very, very impactful for me, because I looked at that generation above me and I said, look, you know, even if you follow all of the prescription of success, nothing is guaranteed, right? And so I really started to think about, well, how could I create a life where I could feel like I was retired, but I was still getting paid, right? So I didn't want to wait until I was older to be able to enjoy my life because, retirement sounds great, but you still got to fill your time with something,
Right.
right? So how can you align your passion, the things that you like to do, with a paycheck, you know? And that takes a lot of discovery and patience with yourself because it's not something that comes right away. Life will give you these small breadcrumbs. They will give you hints, right? And it's your door. It's your responsibility to open that first door, to pick up that first breadcrumb, because it's not going to give you all of the answers, but it will lead you on a path that, in hindsight, you will understand those lessons that life is trying to give you. We all have our own unique path, and I do believe that there is something greater out there that is trying to help us realize those real gems, those life lessons, which is to live for others, to give, to leave this place better than when we found it, to help life thrive, et cetera, et cetera. And you just have to have faith and follow your intuition there. So my biggest piece of advice would be, we've all got things that are knocking on our mind's door. Open that door because something beautiful is on the other side and it's waiting for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before you leave, Bob just said the cardboard slums in Mexico City were one of the most impactful things I've ever seen. Just before you left, I just got to answer that. And then thanks for sharing. It's really inspiring. But yeah.